Sorry,
I didn't think you were going to see us. I didn't mean to make you jump.
There about half a minute.
sorry.
You think?
We did wait before we bibbed you.
Well, I need a heart attack once in a while.
Well, okay.
yeah.
Okay, there you go. What are you doing?
Oh, I'm gonna fly the drone up that way,
yeah.
fly it this way, and get a video of
The video.
approaching Washington.
Oh.
Yeah, it's from my YouTube channel, A Yank in Sussex,
Oh, okay. I'll go and check that
which has
out.
exactly 1,100 subscribers.
Sorry, we've got to go.
All right,
She might think it's a Mexican.
right. Cheers. I am a Yank in Sussex. About 8 miles north of the center of the town of Worthing lies a lovely little village called Washington. It's of particular interest to me due to its name, since before coming to England I lived most of my life in the U.S. state of Washington. The first time we drove past the village, I felt like I had come back home, in a sense. And when I started this channel, I felt that I had to eventually cover the village of Washington at some point. Finally, it's time. If you start off in Worthing Town Center and drive northwards towards the village of Findon, and then take the A24 road towards London and Horsham, you'll also be heading towards Washington. This takes about 17 minutes, traffic permitting. The A24 from Findon is a very efficient but scenic route, and you'll pass through some very pretty landscape. In case one wonders how the village came to be established where we find it, from a geographical point of view, it's on a natural route of travel consisting of a kind of dry valley through the South Downs, rather easier to travel than over the high ground. This isn't deep enough to have spawned a river originating from the Sussex Weald, as the gaps along which the rivers Adur and Arun flow, but it does take the form of what is called a wind gap that channels the flow of wind both north and south. Along the way, you may see this sign announcing the Worthing Crematorium. Now, I'm not trying to be macabre, but the location is historical, and I'll tell you in a bit why. Continue past the crematorium. Here I'm speeding this up. And after passing under a couple of bridges, you'll arrive at what I call the Washington Roundabout. Here we take the third exit. Yes, I'm pretending to be a sat-nav. And on the right, there's 2 roads that lead into the village, along with a rather busy and apparently successful Kia dealership. I'm going to take the second road in this case. The civil parish of Washington consists of the village itself in the middle of an area of 1,276 hectares. That's 3,150 acres. At the 2011 census, the population of the civil parish was 1,867. In the village itself, one can find the Anglican Church of St. Mary, more about this in a few minutes, with an associated Church of England primary school, the Memorial Village Hall, a recreation ground with its multi-use games and play area. There is also the village pub called the Frankland Arms. Outside of the village proper, the parish has a number of interesting locations and activities. Of course, this being an agricultural area, there are the farms, some of which originate from old manors. My usual first source of information about the places I make videos about is Wikipedia. Unfortunately, Washington's Wikipedia article is very sparse and contains no information about its history. Fortunately, there's a great deal of admirable local interest in its history and heritage. I was able to obtain a copy of the very informative and thorough book, The Washington Story, The Forgotten History of a Downland Village, published by the Washington Parish Council in 2000. Its author is the Sussex historian Chris Hare, and I have an autographed copy. In its 118 pages, there's far more information than I could possibly use in this video. I don't think it's currently in print, but used copies are available from various sources. Chris has published quite a few books about Sussex, especially about the town of Worthing. The Parish Council has an excellent website, and it led me to a local lady named Gina Wilmshurst. I visited her briefly to obtain copies of two very informative publications, which are A Washington Scrapbook, The Last 100 Years, and Washington Scrapbook, Going Back. She also has copies of the aforementioned Washington Story available for purchase. These two scrapbooks, along with the parish website and Chris Hare's book, make for an abundant source of information about this lovely village, and way too much information. Since for one reason or another it's common for English place names to occur in multiple locations, I like to list the various different places having the same name. For Washington, however, this is somewhat impractical, because there are so many worldwide. This is entirely due to the worldwide fame of the first President of the United States, George Washington. Outside of two, there are virtually no other places named Washington that don't owe their name to him. This includes places as far afield from any human habitation as Cape Washington, the uninhabited peninsula jutting out from North Greenland. There are only two Washingtons I've been able to find that aren't named after George Washington. One is the place from which he got his own name, and that is his family's ancestral settlement, the town of Washington in England's Sunderland district in Tyne and Wear. It's nicely sizable with a population of 67,000. The other Washington not named after him is this Washington in West Sussex, the subject of this video. The name Washington as a place name owes its origins to the Anglo-Saxon languages. The three components of the name are its three syllables, wash, ing, and tun. Wash comes from a personal name, probably Wasa or Huesa. Ing means roughly derived of or from. Tun, or tun, T-O-N or T-U-N, is the root of the modern English word town, but originally meant something like fenced-off estate, or more accurately, estate with defined boundaries. So the place name Washington originally meant something like the estate of the people or descendants of Wasa, or, according to the village parish council, homestead of Wasa's people. But since the earliest mention of the village in old documents is from 947 AD, that's the best we can do as to where the name comes from. And that's the first mention of the village in history, in a document recording a change of ownership of the manor. A part of Washington, the hamlet of Rock, lies north of the village. While one might think it has the name Rock because rocks are either a prominent feature or a product, it actually has that name because there was an early manor there owned by a Willow Atta Ock, or anglicized William at Rock. The hamlet is split into two by the A24, with the more residential part lying between the angle of the A24 and A283. From the air, or from satellite photography, one can see what appears to be quarries. But these are not rock quarries, they're sand quarries. What they're digging out of the ground is what is called in geological parlance greensand. Greensand is particularly well supplied by nature in the south of England, particularly in the Sussex Weald. What is it? It's the bottom sediment deposit layer in ancient oceans. The greenish color comes from minerals such as iron ore and glauconite. It's an organic soil amendment, and I'm told that it's fabulous for loosening up heavy soils and improving drainage. It also adds potassium and a number of micronutrients to the soil. In the northwest of the parish lies the Heath Common. It sits to the north of the A283 between Washington and Sollington. It's an attractive area of mainly detached homes in a wooded series of lanes sitting on a greensand ridge and bordered on the east by Warren Hill and on the west by Sollington Warren. It has an interesting local history. In 1922, Vera Pragnell, an heiress of a small fortune and quite the idealist, bought 50 acres of land here with the aim of establishing a commune. This was to be known as the Sanctuary, a community that included various religious groups, atheists, revolutionaries, and mystics. The folk who were attracted to the location were very unconventional, and all were seeking a different way of living. Initially, some lived in caravans or tents, but Vera parceled out plots of land on which the people could build shelter, grow vegetables, and tend livestock. Needless to say, like pretty much all such communes, human nature and disillusionment set in as time went on, and as Miss Pragnell herself married and became more conventional, the place gradually changed character and today has become quite gentrified. The sole village pub is the Frankland Arms. The current building was constructed in or around 1804, presumably as a coaching station for travelers between the coast and London. However, there was apparently a pub already located on this site that was called the Washington Inn. In Hilaire Belloc's Sussex drinking song, Hilaire wrote a couple of lines praising the swipes, or beer, at Washington Inn, meaning the Frankland Arms. Here are those lines in the poem. They sell good beer at Haslemere and under Guildford Hill. At Little Cofold, as I've been told, a beggar may drink his fill. There is a good brew in Amberley, too, and by the bridge also. But the swipes they take in at the Washington Inn is the very best beer I know. Now, not being a drinker, I cannot confirm what Mr. Belloc wrote in his poem, but I'm sure the swipes at the Frankland Arms are decent enough. Pub names in Britain can be quite a hobby, because there's a lot of them. But Frankland Arms? This obviously pertains to someone who has arms to bear, thus a member of the nobility or royalty or gentry. But have you ever heard of anyone named Frankland? Up to this point, I had not. Well, in a bit, I'll tell you something about the man that the pub is named for. But I will point out that, surprisingly, this isn't the only pub in the world called the Frankland Arms. There's another one in Thirsk, in North Yorkshire. It has that name for a similar reason that Washington's pub has it. It's because of the Frankland family. The Washington Village Memorial Hall is a registered charity based in West Sussex. They have regular activities throughout the year, including adult ballet, an art class, dog training, freestyle dancing, martial arts, Morris dancing, Women of Washington, and yoga. Like virtually all village halls, they welcome and encourage people and organizations signing up to schedule activities and to attend them as well. Every village has its church, and Washington is no exception. Washington's village church is dedicated to St. Mary, as is its Church of England primary school. St. Mary's Church is part of a very active four-church parish, evident from the literature that's available. There has been a church on the site since at least 1174. St. Mary's was rebuilt in 1866, although the late 15th century tower is original. The church has recently undergone a refurbishment with comfortable seats, toilet facilities, and a well-appointed kitchen, unusual for small villages. The church is very much part of the Washington community and remains open during daylight hours for visitors, although it's best to check opening arrangements ahead if making a special visit. And here is my visit. So here we are at Washington's church. So let's go in and have a look. Turn to open. There we go. Now this is a very active church, it appears. Besides the very nice door, which is quite modern and very functional, this building actually features a kitchen and a toilet. This is very unusual for old village churches, but since this one is apparently well attended and very active, it's not a surprise. One thing leads to another. So back here we have a little kitchen, and behind that door right up ahead is the toilet, which is a very nice looking toilet, by the way. Now, one interesting feature is this church has bells in its tower. And this is the area where the bells are rung from. And as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bell ropes. Go all the way up into the ceiling up there. All right. Goes up into 6 holes in the ceiling for the bells. And the people here that ring the bells are members of a change ringing organization of some sort. I was aware that there were change ringers, people that rang the changes on bells in churches, but I didn't know they had an association. But of course they do. If I can get this focused properly, you can see all the awards and indications of an active bell ringing society here. They're members of the Sussex County Association of Change Ringers. I'm going to pause briefly to explain what change ringing is and to give a short sample. Change ringing is the art of ringing a set of tuned bells in a tightly controlled manner to produce precise variations in their successive striking sequences known as changes. This creates a form of bell music which can't be discerned as a conventional melody, but is a series of mathematical sequences. It can also be automated by machinery. The following is a sample from a Sussex Young Ringers practice, performed here at St. Mary's in preparation for the 2022 Ringing World National Youths Contest in Exeter. In the event, 23 teams competed from across the country from Cornwall to Newcastle. I'm pleased to report that in that year, our Sussex Young Ringers won the Whitechapel Trophy for the best method ringing. If you'd like to hear their winning piece of ringing, it's about 6 minutes long, a link is in the description. The main part of the church is very attractive, very well maintained. History of the church indicates that there's been a church on this site for something in the vicinity of the last 900 years or so. Probably looks best now, depending upon circumstances, because of modern conveniences. There's a lovely organ right here. Which has some really interesting looking pipes. And there is a very nice stained glass right over the altar. Now the ceiling is quite interesting too. Looks like it's got stars up there. It's a vault of heaven, as it were. Anyway, this is the Church of St. Mary's at Washington. Little villages like Washington are not usually associated with what one might call famous or influential people. But Washington in West Sussex is a bit of an outlier in this respect. In modern times, there are two such people, with a third who lived rather longer ago. First, we have the English composer and music teacher John Ireland. He was born in 1879 in Cheshire, England, and lived his final years from 1953 at Rock Mill, a former wind-driven grain or grist mill made into a residence. He passed away there in 1962 and was laid to rest in the St. Mary the Virgin churchyard in Shipley, just 5 miles north of Washington. The majority of his output consisted of piano miniatures and of songs with piano. In order to illustrate the kind of music he wrote, I wanted to find something of his that I liked, that I could play in this video that YouTube wouldn't put a copyright claim on. I did find one. John Ireland was particularly fond of the Channel Islands and wrote music to express the feelings he had when he was there. So here is a short segment from his musical tribute to the Isle of Guernsey, a 3-movement solo piano work called Sarnia, an island sequence, as played by the Dutch pianist Chris Bramer. A link to his full video can be found in this video's description. During World War II, the local area had a resident who later achieved global fame, but who fondly remembered his old home in the Washington area. He worked as a farm laborer, lodged with a family in the Heath Common, and was a frequent patron of the Frankland Arms. He even married a local woman with whom he had a son. Who was that man? Why, it was Jomo Kenyatta, future first president of the nation of Kenya. While living in Washington, he was known by his nickname, Jumbo. He was well liked in the area, got along well with everyone, and despite how poorly colonial authorities treated him after he returned to Kenya following the war, and it was very poorly, he didn't hold a grudge. After becoming president of Kenya, he returned once to visit his old stomping grounds in Washington and Heath Common, but instead of riding a bicycle, he arrived in a Rolls-Royce motorcar. Much further back in time than John Ireland and Jomo Kenyatta, was a local resident by the name of William Frankland. You'll remember that I spoke of Washington's pub called the Frankland Arms, which is named for this man. I found him and his family rather fascinating, and it was hard to keep this segment short. In 1765, when William was about 45 years old, a rich man from his business dealings, he purchased Muntham, a country house and estate just down the road from Washington, not far from the village of Findon. At the time, the estate covered 1,890 acres, or 760 hectares. William had a very interesting life, and so varied that I hardly know how to describe it. His biographer, D.R. Banting, wrote of him in his booklet William of Muntham, a Nabob of Sussex, as a fascinating character, rich, much traveled, intelligent, generous, and approachable, yet in his later years content to hide away in the Sussex countryside with his sheep, books, and mechanical gadgetry. He served his country as a member of Parliament, forgave those who poached his game, and in his will remembered every one of his servants. Here's a pen, ink, and watercolor painting of hare coursing at Muntham Court by artist Samuel Hieronymus Grimm. The gentleman on horseback is apparently, or supposedly, our William Frankland. Because of his owning the Muntham estate, he was known locally as William of Muntham. William passed away at Muntham Court in 1805, childless, having never married. His estate was inherited by one of his nephews, Royal Navy Vice Admiral Henry Frankland, and was eventually sold out of the family. Unfortunately, Muntham Court no longer exists, as it was demolished in 1961. Remember the sign for the Worthing crematorium I pointed out earlier in the video? The land the crematorium stands on today was part of Muntham Court. Washington Village is a comfortable and attractive place, easy to reach due to the A24 highway between Worthing and London, but being conveniently off that busy track, it remains a quiet and lovely refuge from the hustle and bustle. I do like to stop in from time to time in Washington, and I love visiting the Frankland Arms, and I do hope I meet somebody there who has seen this video. This has been a production of A Yank in Sussex. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe or follow. Thanks for watching, and may you have a very nice day.